Hello everyone and welcome back to Rudy's 1/6 World for another retrospective showcase. And I'm actually having a blast with these, and maybe you'll start noticing a theme to the figures I'm looking at. So today we'll be taking a look at a really old Hot Toys release dating back to 2009, and that is Blade from Blade 2, directed by Guillermo del Toro. A few things before we get into the figure. Blade 2 was my favorite of the Wesley Snipes Blade trilogy. It felt like it had a very real presence and it dove into the vampire world a little bit more. I love the villains, and you can tell that Guillermo del Toro did as well, as he ended up using the design for the Reapers for the show he produced, The Strain, about vampires taking over the world. But back to Blade. I know a lot of people credit the resurgence or the birth of the modern comic book movie with they give that credit to the original X-Men release. I think the original Blade had to be one of the first movies to really show that you could make an amazing movie out of comic book properties, at least in the modern age, right? We're not talking about Batman '89 or those classics as well, but in the modern age, that was one of the first movies that really stood out. Blade 2, just remembering the movie, it honestly brings a smile on my face because there was so much great action and style to that just made Blade look like a total badass. Now, Blade will be making his return to the MCU with critically acclaimed actor Mahershala Ali taking on the role, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with it. But I am concerned that he does have his work cut out for him, because at least to me, Wesley Snipes, even with Blade Trinity, which wasn't nearly as good as the first two films, I think Snipes really did embody that character, so it'll be tough to see another actor in the role. Although it goes without saying, Mahershala Ali is a powerhouse actor, and I think he'll do the role justice. Hopefully the movie script doesn't let him down, because I think that's kind of the biggest concern with the MCU recently. Now, the other little tidbit timing wise, Present Toys, which is a third-party company, just released their own version of Blade up for pre-order. Is it a recast? Not sure, but I know this is a hard figure to get in the aftermarket. So for those of you who have been looking for this character, here's a chance to get one at a more reasonable price. There are a couple of improvements on that Present Toys version that we'll discuss during the review. And look, I will say one thing about my own collecting mindset. I've never really purchased these figures as an investment. I've gotten them because, like most of us, I'm a fan of the properties and the material, and I love having these characters on display, so I don't mind 2.0s or reissues, because the way I see it, I'm all for collectors being able to add these great characters to their own collection without having to pay an arm and a leg. So let's take a look at the figure, and I'll start by saying no box again. I've had him on display for almost 13 years now, so the box is long gone. But of course, I kept all the accessories, and this was a nice release with a ton of weapons, including the light grenades, his sidearms, the big modified machine gun, his sword, and an alternate look from the second half of the movie where he has to go into the tunnels to track down the Reapers with the shorter jacket. So think about how nice it was to get all of this in a standard package. Sometimes I do miss those old days of collecting, and some of the accessories are on the figure already, as I've had him displayed with his pistols and the glaives. And I will say one other thing. This figure, of all the figures I own, is one of my favorites without a doubt. So let's look more carefully at the accessories, and I think we should start with his sword, which is without a doubt one of his most distinctive and essential weapons. And this is a really nice piece here that fits nicely into the sword sheath that attaches to his vest. And the handle is nicely detailed with some vampire glyphs on the handle and a nice metallic paint finish. The blade itself is plastic, just painted to look like metal. I think that's one point where the weapon is dated, and it would be nice to have gotten a real metal blade, but it's still really good. Now here's one of the first differences with the Present Toys release, and that's the alternate sword handle with the deployed security spikes. Now, is it essential? I don't think so. I mean, you see it in the first movie, and you see it used a couple of times in the second, with Reinhardt deploying it at the end of right before the final battle. But it's not something you'll need with your blade. It's great to have, but not essential. At least I don't think so. Next up, you get his distinctive machine gun that's been heavily modified by Whistler, and that we see early on in the movie, and it looks great. Lots of detail work with the modifications and the extended barrel, and there is a really nice paint scheme here with some dark silver and black elements that give you a nice blend. Next up, you get his dual pistols, which he does end up using for the majority of the movie, and they have nice modified suppressors with some intricate detailing around the barrel. On top of that, the slides do work, and they are spring-loaded, so a nice additional detail there. And I love the paint apps here with the nice silver elements over the black textured grips. Really nice pieces. Next up, you get another distinctive weapon, which are his foldable glaives, and these look beautiful with a nice glyph on the pivot point and nice metallic paint apps, and they look great in his hand. And if memory serves, this was one of the highlights of the opening scene of that first Blade movie. And they're another distinctive Blade weapon, so I love the options here and that you do recognize where these weapons are from. Additionally, you get two other hands injectors, I guess. Not sure how to really describe them, but they're essentially blades that eject from their housing that sit on the back of his hand. And in the movie, they're used to deliver a dose of the anticoagulant EDTA, which was discovered in the first movie and is used to blow up vampires. Of course, if you watched Blade 2, you know that they're not effective against Nomak, but again, nice to get these. And the final set of weapons you do get are another piece you aren't getting with the present toys version, which are the 2 light grenades that Scud makes for Blade for use during that final Reaper hunt. They're very small, but they have some great detail on them, including the grenade pin and the blue panels where the UV light is intended to emanate from. Again, I do think it's a nice extra to have, but with this character, I do think more than anything, you'll want to display him with the sword or his guns. And the final 2 pieces are more clothing elements. The first being his sunglasses, and let's be honest, we're always going to use them with Blade. They're kind of a defining element of Wesley Snipes' portrayal of the character as well. And these are nicely done with the sleek black frame and the translucent black lenses. And there's nice detail on the sides of the glasses too that look really great on the sculpt. And finally, you get the nylon jacket he uses during the last part of the movie in the sewers. Now, is it as iconic as a long leather coat? Not at all, but it's nice to get the alternate version. Although again, are you really going to display him with this? Not sure. I know for me, it's not that iconic look, but a nice piece to get as well. Now, we have to look at the sculpt, and I will start by saying, let's remember that this is a 13 to 14-year-old figure, and I think that becomes evident in the eyes. The modern crop of figures use some very interesting paint applications or even separate eye systems that really do make them seem realistic, and that's what I think sets Hot Toys apart in this game. Now here you do have some nice paint apps, but they definitely don't look as realistic as modern releases. Having said that, the rest of the sculpt looks incredible with some great detail work, particularly with the tattoos on the side of his head extending down his neck. You can even see some detail work on the forehead where you can almost see his veins. I think for an older sculpt, it really holds up well and looks like a younger Wesley Snipes. But I think more importantly, once you put the glasses on, this looks like Blade and has to be one of the best sculpts and figures Hot Toys has released. Now looking at the figure itself, I have him wearing the leather trench and it just looks amazing. The trench is a little wired, so you can definitely do some nice poses with him. The other highlight has to be the vest. Now this one has some more intricate detailing when compared to the original movie, and it does pop really nicely with the buckles. The other thing I really like here is the red lining on the coat because it does give a nice splash of color. Pants are also pleather, and they look really good ending in the boots, which are really nicely sculpted and very unique. And he does include his metal stakes on a holster on his pant leg, which look really good. My holster is a little damaged, and I'll say that was my fault from years ago, where I was a little too rough in trying to get the stakes in place, but they still look great. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the pleather material. I will happily report that even though this figure is 14 years old, mine is still in really good shape. The jacket has no sign at all of peeling or deterioration. Same is true for the vest and for the pants, although full disclosure, the bottom of the pants at the cuffs are showing some slight cracking. It's very slight, but something I'll keep an eye on. And again, for such an older figure, I'm really happy to report that he's in great condition, and even the joints still feel very solid. The other thing I love about this figure, you do get some nice joints, and his arms have double jointed elbows, so posability can definitely be maximized. And I think with certain characters that becomes key. Characters like Blade and the Punisher really do need that posability, which is why I had such an issue with the Punisher figure. Blade fortunately doesn't suffer from that, and I have to note that he really is a fun figure to pose and set up with all the distinct accessories. So as we look at some additional poses, let's talk about the present toys version. I didn't do a first thoughts on that figure just because I have this original, and I honestly think the original still holds up exceptionally well. Now, as mentioned, the original did include a few extra weapons and accessories that don't come with the present toys version. I will say I don't think they're essential accessories, so don't think the new version is really taking a hit for not including those. The other thing that does set apart the present toys version is that the pants and the jacket are real leather. So if you're looking for longevity, real leather should give you that. Now mine is still in great shape, but for peace of mind, obviously getting real leather is an upgrade, so I think credit goes to Present Toys on the superior material choice. Finally, the sculpt. While I love the sculpt from the original, there's no denying that it is a little dated. Still holds up incredibly well, especially when you put the shades on him, but I think the Present Toys one, just from having a sculpt that's much more recent, might give you an overall improvement here. Now, last thoughts on the Present Toys version. I don't own any Present Toys product. I do have the good, the bad, and the ugly figures on pre-order, but I can't comment on the quality of the bodies or how the figures compare to the promo shots. So that's something to consider when looking at this figure. I will say though, if you're looking to pick up a Blade from the original Wesley Snipes trilogy, I think this is a really viable option. And with the real leather, I think it's an opportunity to get a great looking figure without having to pay the high prices that a Hot Toys version would command on eBay. And just based on age, there may be some additional improvements and incentives to getting that new version of the figure. Now, unfortunately, this was the only figure we got from the series. I think Hot Toys wasn't quite the behemoth it is today, and they were focusing on main characters more than anything, but I always thought it was a shame that we didn't get Nomak, the Reaper. He would have been a great companion piece to Blade. On top of that, in terms of great toy options, you did have the Blood Pack. I mean, I think that would have made for a great display with not only such interesting characters, but characters that were played by great actors. Take Donnie Yen's Snowman, for example, or Ron Perlman's Reinhardt. I would have personally loved to have some additional figures, and I probably would have been in for the entire Blood Pack. And on top of that, I think it would have been great to get a Blade 1 version. Fingers crossed, based on the interest people are showing for this figure, some third party notices and maybe decides to take on the line. I think it's almost 99% certain that Hot Toys won't be tackling this one anymore. And with the new Blade movie, they'll probably be focusing on that license more than anything. So that was a quick retrospective look at the Hot Toys Blade figure, which is one that I think holds up remarkably well for such an older figure, and really is a highlight in my collection. And I will say, I was looking to review the figure before Present Toys made their announcement. If you looked at my other recent retrospective showcases, I was kind of heading towards my own version of the Midnight Suns, with Blade leading the group. But it was a nice coincidence to get that Present Toys announcement and to be able to do this comparison. So again, Hot Toys 1 is a great figure, and I'm really happy to still have him in my collection. But if you are really looking for any version of the character, I think the Present Toys one is a really great option that won't necessarily break the bank, which is always a plus with how expensive figures are getting these days. So let me know your thoughts on the original Blade figure and the new one by Present Toys. And do you think some third-party company might choose to dive more deeply into these classic movies? And as always, thanks for watching, and if you are enjoying the content, please like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll touch base on the next video.